Hello and welcome to the Sparkle on the Electric Car Christmas Tree, brought to you by the team at electrifying.com. On the show this week will be Christmassy. We're going to be looking at what Father Christmas or Santa, or whoever you refer to him, will be delivering his gifts on Christmas Eve. We're also going to be talking about how hydrogen is making a comeback. Welcome to a very festive edition of the Kilowatt Half Hour. I'm Ginny.
I'm Tom.
Hello, Tom. Tom, I got my Christmas sweater on. Look.
Well, I've got. If you look at me, I've also got my special subtle Christmas T-shirt on. This isn't really very good for people who are listening on the podcast, is it? But I've got a Christmas polo shirt on, and you've got a Christmas jumper.
And look,
and a Christmas mug.
I've got my Christmas mug with Christmas trees on. So Merry Christmas, we can call it now. We've got we're not overdoing the festive. Don't worry, don't turn off now if you're a Grinch. But we do have a little bit of festive stuff on the show today. I think, should we kick off with our festive news?
Yes, I think we should.
It's transport for the big man on Christmas Eve, and he could well be in something different this year. Is the news that we're bringing to you hot off the press. So our friends over at Auto Express ran a little competition to get car designers to come up with what Father Christmas might drive. We have some really good mates at Citron, and they really took this to quite a degree, didn't they, Tom?
Yeah, they must have been a bit quiet at work that day.
So the excellently named Pierre Leclerc, who is their design boss, who is a really lovely man, ran a competition amongst the whole design team to enter this, which I just think is brilliant. So I met up with Pierre a couple of weeks ago, and he was showing me some of the winning entry and some of the other entries, and we just thought we've got to get this on the Kilowatt Half Hour. It is an absolutely excellent idea. So he put the competition out. He chose 3 runners up. He chose a winner that went forward to the main competition, which is great. Now, listen, it's a podcast. We know it's a podcast, but we've got that covered, haven't we, Tom?
Well, kind of, yes, because we'll talk to the designer, but also you'll have to look on the socials if you want to see the designs, won't you?
We will. So we'll have them on the website over at electrifying.com. There will also be over on our socials, over on X or Twitter, whatever you still call it. So they will be on there as well. But Tom, just talk us through the 3 designs, because the 3 finalists were really different, weren't they?
Yeah, and it's amazing the amount of work that's got into them as well. So there's one which is a kind of like the Transformer toys. So it looks like a kind of robot. And there's another one which is an AMI with caterpillar tracks on, so like tank tracks.
She's so cute. It's so sweet, but wouldn't perhaps hold many gifts.
No, they had to use a roof rack to put the gifts on there, which probably doesn't help the aerodynamics. And the winning one is it's got sleigh bits on the back, so the runners for a sleigh, and some really big, huge, chunky wheels at the front. But it looks like a kind of modern interpretation of the H van, so those vans that you see serving coffee and things. It looks brilliant.
Yeah. It's absolutely wonderful. And we're very lucky now to be joined on the Kilowatt Half Hour by the creator of that winning design, that wonderful H van inspired snowmobile. Please give a very warm welcome to Roman Ugorov, the senior exterior designer for Citron. Roman, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Many thanks. Lovely to be here.
I think my first question for you has got to be, where do you start designing a sleigh for Santa? Because let's face it, his form of transport is pretty iconic, isn't it, already?
Yeah, definitely. I think the brief we got from our boss, Pierre Leclerc, was relatively open, I would say, but there were key elements we really needed to integrate, which are really related to our design identity of Citroën. Meaning we needed to integrate the logo on a very vertical, prominent surface, and we needed to integrate this 3-point light signature, which is very distinctive and very visible on our new products from Citroën.
Yeah. What does it feel like to win? Does it mean anything? Do you get an extra mince pie or an extra gift for Christmas or something, or is it just the prestige?
I believe you have to ask Santa.
Absolutely, of course. And So obviously, we don't often see Citron as a brand going back into your past, but you did take some inspiration from this design from the history, the rich history of Citron, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my case, like I mentioned earlier, we were relatively free, so each designer took its own path, and I was just contemplating on the fact, okay, we had in the past this Citroen Tipache, which was very iconic. By the way, we've got it at our like coffee area at Citroen, so we're all very familiar with the car. And I just had this idea of why not to kind of reinvent and bring it to the topic of Santa sleigh, because half of the car, as you can clearly see, is inspired heavily by the original Type H Citroen with the new identity logo. The front wheels are a bit more off-roady, of course, to adapt for the winter ride and all. But the bed, the other half of the car, is already accommodating those skates, and you have a huge bed really for generous gift bags, basically, with Citroen logos. So it could be really very visible and very distinctive when you put them next to the houses. So yeah, that was the key approach. And yeah.
I think we should possibly explain to the readers who can't see what it is. The Citroen H van, as we would call it in the UK, is what you would see serving coffee or sort of toasties at any festival or railway stations, don't you? So it's that 1950s and 60s, I think, van. And the original van had sort of corrugated panels, didn't it? So they were to make it more rigid. And that's perhaps one of the most distinctive features. And you haven't used that. It's still obviously an H van that's the inspiration, but there's no corrugations. Is that just bringing it up to date? Did you think about having some corrugations? Or
I mean, to be totally transparent with you, I didn't even think that deeply into the topic of like really surface language and design. I tried to modernize it, but it was just my general main impression. I always start from big things as proportions, styling elements, and only after you are coming closer to this like tiny little recess elements on the original Tipache, which probably I could have utilized, but I decided not to. Yeah.
And Roman, as you said, it was a competition set by your boss Pierre, and we've got a couple of the other designs here that you just pipped them at the post. Santa obviously decided well when he chose yours, but the other two designs are really interesting. So one of them based on the AMI. Just talk us through the other two designs that we can see.
Well, the other design was based on the AMI, and because it's a new AMI which is about to come out on the road, I guess the designer of this project was really trying to create this kind of Santa version of AMI, let's say, with caterpillars, really again adapting for the winter environment, for the forest environment. Yeah. And we all thought that would be a really, really fun idea to kind of put this also out. And the other design, like you mentioned earlier, it's a bit more robot-like. And once again, this is like totally free, depending on each designer. Somebody decided to go in a bit more serious world, in a bit more car world, as probably myself. And other people really wanted to reinterpret it from different angles. But once again, if you see all of our proposals, on all of them, the key element was integrating our identity. So all of them have got 3-point light signature, and the logo very prominent and very visible. Yeah.
I worry about the AMI one slightly, and I think the reason it didn't win is because of the top speed. So Santa's sleigh needs to do 650 miles per second. And I think that means it wouldn't meet the regulations for a quadricycle. That's the main issue there, I think.
My take on it would be also the size of the bed, because you could put a lot more gifts in the tip ash.
Of course,
that was when.
Absolutely key to that. So let's stay with Santa for a moment. And if Santa was to have to choose a modern car from Citroen's range, so something that's on sale at the moment, Roman, which of the cars on sale could you see Santa using for his daily driver? Of course, he's got your car for when he has to, whiz around the world on Christmas Eve and get all those gifts delivered. But what would he use day to day, do you think?
I was about to mention, actually, he should have used what I drew at the beginning. But since you are mentioning that, I think we've got a lot of range of in our lineup of Citroen We have K9, K0, depending on the size. I think those cars, or the last C3 Aircross is also very roomy. I think he could have gone in all those kind of options. Yeah, if we are thinking about modern day era. Yeah, let's say.
Yeah, we think he'd have gone for zero emissions, don't we, Tom? Santa's definitely got an electric daily driver. It just sort of suits the environment that he's in there, you know. No tailpipe emissions, nice electric powertrain.
Talking of technology, I'm just interested in the process, because obviously you did a sketch initially, which I presume doesn't take very. But the quality of the images that we can see, and you can see on our social media, it is amazing. That the computer generated. Do you just say to AI, create this, or is it more complicated? How long does it take? Because
I think, yeah,
it looks real.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think many people like almost like perceive AI as like cheating those days, that, you know, it kind of all seems from outside world, that you basically do nothing. You just say to the computer and it does everything for you. I would definitely say it's not as simple as that. And most importantly, I think we should definitely embrace the topic of AI. Technology is there. We should really utilize it as a tool in our own needs as designers. Kind of to maybe shed some light on the process I did my Santa sleigh with. Basically, I created this doodle, which, yeah, like you are totally right, Mason. I basically spent maybe 5 minutes doing this initial, pen sketch on a tiny little post-it paper. But then I provided this doodle to AI, and I did a lot of back and forth juggling between me and Photoshop. I give a lot of input in terms of like proportions, details, color. And my like very last stage was like purely Photoshop. It was really like about like key elements of Citron identity and Citron night design, for example, and the logo. This was done by myself. And yeah, I think it's a lot more complicated than what people think it is. But at the same time, it's a really powerful tool, and I think it really allows many designers, including like us in the studio, to utilize it for the best way possible, to present our ideas to everyone.
Really interesting. And I think sticking with that subject of how realistic it looks, how realistic could this be? Because when Pierre, your boss, showed me the photographs of Santa Sleigh a couple of weeks ago, I said, "Oh, you've got to make this," and he didn't say no. So, are there any plans afoot for us to, actually go, and perhaps Tom and I could go and test drive this next year in some kind of suitable conditions?
I think I would definitely love to see that, although I'm not probably the one who is really allowed to comment a lot on our future projects and our future like show cars or production cars. However, I would definitely see that the key identity element, the key approach is, Citroen was always also not only about like reinventing the architecture of the car, but also about functionality, about really optimization. And I think those key approaches, let's say in design, you will definitely see in our future projects for sure.
Brilliant. Well, we will look forward to it. I'm going to write my letter to Santa, Roman, and I'm going to ask for a version of your sleigh to be made for next year. So let's hope that Santa can deliver that one for me.
Yeah, let's see if it comes next year then. Yeah.
Thanks very much for joining us. And of course, let us know in the comments below what you think of the designs. If you're not able to see them because you're not watching this, they will be on our social channels, also over on our website, electrifying.com. And who knows, just keep your eyes peeled to the skies in a couple of days' time, because you may see that very familiar face floating through the sky, and he might not be in a sleigh this year.
Definitely. Well, it was lovely to be here. It was really nice meeting you.
Such a fun thing for them to do. And I think it just shows actually what a creative brand Citron is, because they've really upped their design generally, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think also what you find with some of these crazy projects is that occasionally it leads to something that makes production. And maybe we'll see an H-Fan. I'd really like that.
I'd really like that too. And let's not forget, this is the design director that came up with the Citron Ollie. So they have form for doing things. So we'll be keeping across this story and watching Santa closely.
Actually, if you're watching this and you look at the in the background of that little chat we were having there, I think there was like a chrome model of an Ollie. And I thought, that should be your Christmas present, because you
Are
love
you
that car,
sure?
Ollie. Just on
Yeah,
the
I was.
shelf, there was a little chrome
Oh,
Ollie, I think.
that was still one of my best experiences ever. I was the first person outside a few people in Citron to drive that Ollie concept car around Paris, which was both the most wonderful experience of my life, but also one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, because I'm in a priceless concept car in Parisian traffic. So it was fairly stressful, but it was great. The video's on the YouTube channel if you haven't seen it. So come on then, TB. That's a bit of Christmas fun over with. What's happening in the real world, cars?
Well, the big story this week, I think, has been the rumoured merger of Honda and Nissan. I mean, that's mind-blowing stuff, isn't it? If you think about those two companies
Yeah,
merging,
it
but
is.
both are, having a difficult time at the moment. Partly, I
Yeah.
think, as a result of their lack of investment in electric cars, so the future's not looking great. I mean, Nissan were way ahead of the curve, weren't they, with the Leaf? But then they let it kind of slip a bit.
Ding! He's
Yeah.
got to mention the Leaf team.
And Honda, I don't think any of us would say that Honda's electric car offerings have been great, but they've got some interesting things in this. Like, you put Sony into the mix, because do you remember Honda and Sony did a concept car, electric car?
Yeah, they did.
And then there's Renault, because Renault owns a bit of Nissan. So, I mean, it's incredibly complicated relationships to get round there. But if you think about all those companies getting together to do electric cars, it's quite exciting, and it'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think it suddenly makes it very interesting. And I think they've got to do it to survive. I mean, one of the things you and I talk about a lot is we'll have little chats sometimes about, right, who's going to be the Kodak of the car industry at this
Yeah.
particular point in time. And we've said for a while that, particularly with the rise of Chinese car makers, and also just what Kia and Hyundai are doing. Korea is an absolute global leader when it comes to electric vehicles. Those, they're absolutely smashing it, those brands. They've got to do something. And I think there is this sense that by doing this, it will give them the weight and the investment that they need in order to, fight to stay relevant in this transition. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, they're not massively relevant at the moment, which is really sad with Nissan. Obviously, given the lead that they took with the Leaf. I mean, surely the first electric car so many people drove. And the RE, is a good car, but then it's kind of stopped there. And of course, we're going to see new products coming from Sunderland, from the factory up there, but that's still a couple of years away, isn't it?
Yeah. So maybe that'll help them survive. And I think they could do some really interesting things. I love Honda's innovation with its everything it does. I mean, from robot lawnmowers to some of the cars it's had. So it could do some really interesting things if it put its mind to it, and if it's got access to all
There's a
the tech.
Honda E local to me, one of the few people who bought one of them. And every time, I didn't love it at first, found it a bit gimmicky. But whenever I drive past it now, I think what a cute car it is. So, yeah.
They're really holding their value as well, those Honda E's. I mean, they were expensive in the first place, but I think they've got a bit of a cult following now.
Okay. Could that be a possible Barnard's bargain for today?
It's not, actually. I need to do some research. I don't think they're bargains. That's the thing, that they're expensive. So it's...
Okay, good stuff. So tell me about hydrogen, because I had to double take when I saw this story on the website, which is Vauxhall have put a hydrogen van on sale, which is £9,000 more than the electric version.
Yeah.
And my head almost did a swivel. I was like, really? Am I reading that right? Because yes, hydrogen will work so well for heavy goods vehicles and for vans. But you're going to have to presumably be able to fuel that at depots, aren't you? That's the only way that's going to be viable.
Yeah. So it's a Movano, so a big van, and it is £9,000 more than the battery version. And well, strangely enough, it has an 11 kilowatt hour battery anyway, which you need to start up the system. So you need to charge that battery. It can use the regen braking to do it, but otherwise you have to plug it in. So you have to plug in the van and then use that battery to start the hydrogen fuel cell system. It has a range of 300 odd miles, and you can refuel it in 5 minutes. But you're going to need And I think it's going to be aimed at fleets who have a depot
Mhm.
for like I don't know, buses or trucks or something,
Yeah.
or maybe they're a chemical company and they make hydrogen anyway. So you've got one of those refueling stations, because otherwise there are what, 5, 6 refueling
There's about,
stations in the UK.
weirdly, I looked at this this recently, and actual public ones, yeah, I think there's 5. There's a few in places like a couple of universities have got them, but
Mm,
there's one at Beaconsfield on the M40, which is actually in a really good position. So there are a few around the country, but certainly not enough to make it really viable unless you live close to one. But of course, the beauty is they're very quick to fill up, aren't they,
yeah.
with hydrogen? It's in there, almost instantly. And actually, you do get a really decent driving range out of it as well. So it's really
Mm.
well suited for this particular purpose. But I'll be interesting to see where those vans go. If it, I presume they will sell some, but who ends up buying them?
Yeah, I think they're just going to be aimed at those big fleets, aren't they? And places like
Yeah, yeah,
universities and bus companies. But it's interesting with hydrogen that a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, you're backing the wrong horse with electric cars. It's going to be hydrogen that's the
yeah,
future." I go, "Well, how? Explain to me how that
yeah.
works." You need to build filling stations that are £1,000,000 a pop and take up an acre of space, and it's not as economical to do it. And they just go, "Ha ha ha."
Mhm.
Well, you'll see.
Okay, we're waiting to show us. It's also the challenges around producing green hydrogen as well, which of
Mm.
course is the clean version of hydrogen. And hydrogen takes huge amounts of energy to produce. So
And
there's
then
a
to
lot of
distribute.
challenge,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of challenges there to really scaling up the supply of hydrogen. But the very first alternatively fueled vehicle I drove a very long time ago, before I even drove my first electric vehicle, and that was in the late 90s. Before that, I'd driven a Honda fuel cell vehicle.
Mm.
So I went out to Japan and drove a fuel cell. And at the time then, I think we've said a lot, haven't we, on this podcast and talked generally about the fact that you really didn't know which way it was going to go. A lot of the big
Mm.
manufacturers were looking at hydrogen. And, as it turns out, it's electric. But Tom, we might be proved wrong. We might have to rename ourselves.
Yeah.
Could we still be called
Hydronifying.
the electrifying? The hydrogen half hour. It's not quite got the same ring, has it?
It hasn't really, no.
Talking of vans,
Mm.
I have heard a rumor from the team that you've turned
Yeah.
into a white van man.
Well, yeah, we've got a video which is coming out, I don't know when, of Nicola reviewing the new Transit Custom, which is, for me, going to be a really important electric car, because the Transit
Yeah.
Custom has been several times Britain's best-selling vehicle. So, we all talk about Britain's best-selling car, but actually, in terms of sheer numbers, the Ford Transit Custom is the best-selling vehicle.
Mm.
And you think, oh, well, okay, they finally electrified it. We've had the bigger Transit for a while, electric, but now this is the Transit Custom, so the smaller one. And so I had a go in it when Nicola was doing the video, just to see what it was like, and it's, as you'd expect, brilliant.
Is
So,
it?
like all transits are, it's just like, this is so much fun, and so car-like and refined, and not like they were in the old days. And if you're a van driver and you're going to get one of these, I'm quite jealous. It's
Yeah.
really good.
It's that I've driven quite a few electric vans over the years, and it's the smoothness and the
Mm,
just how relaxing the drive is. It's fantastic, isn't it?
yeah. And it's just that the way that Ford have taken on feedback and looked at how vans are used and then designed it around it. So things like, if you're a delivery driver and you have the keys in your pocket, it will shut the windows, for example, as you walk away, and then
Brilliant.
come back, and it's got a steering wheel which tilts to go flat, so you can have your lunch on it, or
I
put a
love that.
laptop if you're waiting for something while you're charging. It's just a really clever, nice van. And the one that they gave us looked quite sporty, so it's got stripes up it and alloy wheels and things. It's just, yeah,
Yeah,
I loved
I
it.
saw it. It was there when we were all filming that day, and I didn't have time to take it out. And I was actually quite jealous because I do love vans. So when I was growing up, my dad, that was our family daily driver, was a VW Transporter, and that's actually the car I'm really excited about next year, because that's getting electrified next year.
Mm.
So yeah, I think we might have a little fight on who gets to do that one, but we can certainly. I think we'll be doing a battle of the vans, and actually we are launching a van channel, aren't we, Tom?
We are, yeah. Interestingly, about
So
your Transporter, you know
go
what that's
on,
based on?
the
It's a
buzz.
reworked Transit.
Oh, of course it is, because they did the deal.
They did the badge
didn't
engineering.
they?
So it's all very
Of course.
controversial among the
Yes.
Volkswagen fans, but I don't think they need to be scared, because if it's anything like the Transit, it's going to be great.
Honestly, it was Ford that got the bum deal out of that. I think, because VW Group got all the Ford van architecture, and Ford got all the VW stuff, which means they've got all those the annoying switchgear and some of the real irritating quirks from Volkswagen. So I think that actually VW did very well out of that little swap of technology.
Well, also, what I find amusing is that, that they've said to Ford, "Oh, you have to have the haptic switches, you have to have all these things because it's part of the car." And Ford must have gone, "Oh, right then." But then Skoda said, "Nah, we want some proper switches." And Skoda got away with it. They're part of the Volkswagen Group,
which is just another reason why we love Skoda. Anyway,
tick.
Let's
You got
move
your
on.
Skoda talking.
Okay, one to me too. So Toyota, that I've seen those pictures of the Suzuki sort of e-Vitara type thing, the urban cruiser.
Yeah, so
Didn't fill me with joy.
Toyota's second electric car to go along with the BZ4X, and they've gone here it is, the second one. So it's it's called the Urban Cruiser, which I think was another car that they had not that long ago.
Yeah, it was.
And it's kind of disappointing as you might expect, like that Suzuki, because there's a great video, isn't there, by Nicola on an ice skating rink with the walk around of that Suzuki Vitara, just kind of going, these figures don't add up. I don't really get it. And it's kind of the same with the Toyota.
It's also just disappointing to keep seeing SUV type vehicles coming around. I remember having a chat with Ian Callum, who was the design director at Jaguar and, of course, lots of other great brands over the years, responsible for the Ford Puma back in the day, the very first one, amongst many other beautiful things. And he was talking about electrification, and this was before they'd released the I-Pace, and he was saying it's really exciting as a designer because it allows us to do like break barriers, and we're not confined by everything that we have to do, and we've got to fit, an internal combustion engine and everything you need with that into the car. And I just don't think there's many brands that have actually nailed that. And that promise of, electric cars are going to be interesting and exciting. There's been a lot of very meh looking cars, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that when we were talking about the Jaguar Type 00, and that's got that long bonnet, that's kind of almost the opposite of the I-Pace. They've gone completely the other direction, because the I-Pace they'd made the most of it being electric, so it's got a very small bonnet. And now the new concept has an enormous bonnet, which
I know
almost makes no sense for an electric car.
Yeah, let's just say that Ian's no longer there. So Ian actually is going to be joining us on the Kilowatt Half Hour in the new year. So Ian has got, he is. No, did you? Have I not mentioned that to you? He's coming on to have a chat with us.
Oh, excellent.
So yeah, he's got his own design company now. He's doing some quite interesting, exciting things with electric. So yeah, we'll have to try and see if we can get him to fess up what he makes of the Type 00. But if you're not subscribed already, do make sure you do, either on your podcast platform or if you're watching here on YouTube, because Ian's going to be joining us to have a chat about life and electric cars and designing cars. So that's coming in the new year.
Excellent.
Be very good.
Forward to that.
Okay. Do you have a Barnard's bargain for us?
Of course I have a Barnard's bargain.
Of course he does.
And actually...
And it's a surprise for me, isn't it?
It's a surprise. And also one of our listeners has a Barnard's bargain, which I feel slightly cheeky. But it's actually a Barker's bargain because he's called Michael Barker. But we'll do mine first because it's a lease. Now, it's a Maxus MIFA. I don't know if it's MIF or MIFA 9, which isn't a vehicle we've tried at all. And it's
getting
not
my
a van.
phone to remind myself what that looks like.
Maxus MIFA 9. Okay. And this just appeared on our leasing pages, and I'm like, what the? Eh? And it's a 7-seat MPV. Maxus, of course, make more famous for their vans, but a 7-seat MPV, 323-mile range, like a kind of limo style thing, like a Merc EQV. So the sort of thing you get picked up from in a hotel or airport courtesy thing. 343 quid a month. Now,
What?
it's a lot of car for that amount of money, but they just get kind of blump. Here they are, plop. So it looks
Is
as
that
though
on
instead
your
of doing,
standard kind of, what is it,
yeah, so it's
£3,000 down and 8,000 miles a year?
well, it's 6 months payment in advance, and then 8,000 miles a year and a 3-year deal. So, I mean, it's the same sort of money as a 5-seat Buzz run out. So that you've got that. It's actually a little bit less, but you think, oh, do I want the 7 seats? Do I want the?
I
But
mean, if you're stuck for an affordable 7-seat car, which there really hasn't been any offerings, because I've actually got, I'm very lucky, I've got the 7-seat ID Buzz, which has just arrived, which I've driven in America, but haven't driven here yet. But that's definitely not going to cost you, £343 a month.
no.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like we should. They're very hard to get hold of, these cars to review, aren't they? But I think that
Mm,
can be our New Year's resolution, that we will
mhm,
get hold of one. We will let you know whether it's worth investing your cash in.
yeah, yeah. The listener's bargain from Michael Barker is he is picking up today an Moda E5. Which was £249 deposit and £249 a month for the Noble version. Oh no, so that's for the base version. For the Noble version, 299, so an extra 50 quid for all the equipment. So that is pretty cheap. It doesn't mention what mileage
Yeah.
or deposit it's got on that, but would seem quite attractive. I have seen a couple around actually, but I must say I wasn't terribly impressed by that car. So I think I'd probably look at something else instead.
But you're very picky, which is why we love you. And what we're paid to do is to be very picky. But actually, as an affordable car, that's quite a lot of kits, because there's a lot. That's how Amoda is pitching itself, isn't it? As you get all the bells and whistles when it comes to the tech that you get and all the
Yeah,
equipment and all the niceties. So yeah, let us know. And we love the Barker's bargain. Michael,
yeah,
drop us a line. Please, if you can, either to podcast@electrifying.com, or if you want to just do it in the comments, that's also fine. Let us know what you think, and perhaps give Tom a few reasons why he needs to perhaps reconsider the Amoda E5, because he has been a little down on it. I haven't driven it yet, so I can't pass comment on it. But yeah, let us know what you think of it. And we love that Barker's bargain. So if any of you have got bargains of the week, or you picked up a car that you think was a steal, let us know. We'd love to
yeah.
hear from you as always.
And let me know some of the details and also where people can buy these from. That's always helpful as well, so that we can pass on the love of these bargains.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. So we've got a welcome to the Electric Car Club, which is we always love. We've had an email from Chris Bees. Hello, Chris. So Chris has sent an email in, and he says, "I am happy to report I've joined the club, and I've got myself one that you all have a soft spot for. Da 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 da. The ENIAC. Ding." Sorry, Tom.
New listeners should know that Ginny has a strange obsession with it. Well, it's not even that strange. Has an obsession with the ENIAC. She just thinks it's the best car in the world.
I don't think it's the best car in the world, but I just think it does what it sets out to do so well. And it's the answer to so many people's car buying questions. But this is what I love from Chris. So he said, I was deciding between the E2008 budget option, which would allow me to get very low mileage and newish, an ID4 or an ENIAC. Decided to go with the ENIAC because I preferred the screens, the buttons on the steering wheel, yes, and the massive boot, yes. And I've christened it my dad car, which is just such a great, because it's my mum car. Honestly, that is it's me with my mum hat on that car. I'm getting to grips with advertised range versus real world. I guess winter is a bad time to try and compare, but I seem to be getting around 160 to 180 miles, charging to 80% and running down to 20. I would say, is that what I should be getting? I'd say it probably is if you're only doing that 20 to 80.
Because I looked at 160 to 180 miles and thought, oh, that's low for a full charge. But if that's just that, yeah, that 60% of charge, that's really good, I'd say.
It's really good. And this is the thing that I loved about the ENIAC. When I ran one for 6 months over winter, I actually found it pretty efficient. There was a drop off in range, but I think it was certainly no more than 15 to 20%, which I think we kind of say you should expect that. But obviously, a lot of cars they're a lot worse than that. I mean, we've talked a lot about efficiency recently, and we're going to be talking about it again a bit later. But I think, yeah, it was about a 15% drop off I saw on the Enyaq, a bit more if I was doing motorway driving. And yeah, anyway, I'm very happy about that. Thanks again for helping me decide. Love the podcast as always. Thank you, Chris, and welcome to the club.
Well, talking of efficiency, John Graham emailed to podcast@electrifying.com and said, I totally agree that reviewers should concentrate on the efficiency of EVs. In fact, I think the whole WLTP nonsense should be retired. We're told not to rely on it as an accurate measure of how the car will perform, but they still mention it in all the promo material and car websites. How about changing that efficiency that can get independently tested? Now, this is a tricky one, isn't it? Because we do mention it, but the trouble is, if we're testing a car in summer, it's going to be much better than testing a car in winter. And also, as we know, different drivers have different efficiencies. So WLTP was designed to make a kind of a benchmark that would be the same, done in a lab, but be more representative. So to do that again would be tricky. So what happens is the manufacturers learn what happens in the test and how to, I suppose, play the figures, isn't it? And then then everyone says, oh, it's cheating again because it's in the real world, and they have to change the test again. So there does need to be a benchmark that's the same for everybody, that's fair for everybody, and isn't, you driving a car at 20 degrees somewhere nice and warm on the flat, and then me driving it in winter somewhere completely different where it's hilly, because they're not like for like. So WLTP is imperfect in lots of ways, but it does give a kind of benchmark for everybody of how efficient the car's going to be, I suppose. I can't think of a better way.
I kind of get it though, because I was on the radio this week talking about electric buses up in Scotland, and one of the bus companies up there has, surprisingly, actually, from what I understand about buses is they're fitted with the battery they need to do the journeys that they're required to do. So they've invested heavily in electric buses up in Scotland, but they've got stories of one particular route. The bus is actually running out of charge with passengers on it. And all you can think that's happened in that case is that people haven't factored in things like it's even more complex with the bus because it's how many people it's carrying. If you've got a full laden bus with, I don't know what the capacity is, 60, 70 people on there, the weight, of course, is going to be a bit much bigger draw. And also, what's the actual topography of the route like? Is it very hilly? All of those things can make such a big impact. So efficiency is a really big, tricky thing. And it does really irritate me when we test cars where it's losing so much in winter. So I think we're going to put our thinking caps on is the answer to this one. I agree. I mean, the thing the WLTP system isn't perfect, but we're going to have a chat about this and see. Either we'll do a big winter test of some of the most popular cars in the new year and really try and come up with some definitives under the same conditions. But yeah, I know it's a subject that we'll be revisiting for the whole of winter, and then summer comes and we'll have forgotten about it again. But we had loads of comments about this, didn't we? So Statch one said would definitely like to see a heat pump, no heat pump comparison. So this was your conversation last week on the podcast, wasn't it? Which is about cars with heat pumps and not, and whether it's worth the investment, if they don't come as standard. And I think again that is something we're going to do in January, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. I think the Kia EV3, for example, you can only get a heat pump on the top version, and it's 900 quid. And you think, oh, do I want that? Do I need to spend that money? Is it worth it for like 0.7 7p a kilowatt, isn't it? If you're charging overnight, is it worth it? Are you ever going to get your money back? But if you're needing, if you're far from home and you're thinking, am I going to make it home without a charge? It's going to be that extra 20 miles or so of range that's going to make the difference rather than the money.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ron Stanley messaged us through YouTube to say, yes, please, to the with or without heat pump. I'm thinking about a Kia EV3 for my next EV next year and wonder about the need to spend an extra £900 for the privilege of having one. Great, informative show as ever. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. That is lovely. Right, I think we've got the answer to this. We're going to do this in the new year. We're going to really drill down and come up with a pretty robust test on a couple of different cars with and without the heat pump. There we go.
Good plan.
And we've got lots of comments on these. Should we do a couple more while we're here? Do you want to do that one from D Fowls?
Yeah. So he spec'd his ID7 Tourer with a heat pump as he saw some reviews from Germany where someone compared them with and without. In their more extreme conditions, it seemed to have a 7% improvement, which means the cabin warms up more efficiently as and when you need it. I'll report back on my findings, but you might have to wait until next winter. Oh, talking of warming up efficiently, there's a story which I've seen today about Genesis, who've invented a heated windscreen, which is nothing new. It's been around for, 30 years or more. But they've got a new system which is so efficient at defrosting windscreens, they think you could do away with the blowers.
Oh,
so
wow.
And you think, that'd be a revolution, wouldn't it? Because you're getting
Really
in your car and putting the blowers on, it's so noisy.
It's so noisy. And this is a thing I love about preconditioning in a winter's morning. It's just a joy, isn't it? To chuck the scraper away and get into that warm, toasty car that's been done off the home charger. It's brilliant. And just a quick final one on that. Ian's 3328, also on YouTube. Looking at an EV3, won't be buying the heat pump at £900. It will take ages to get that money back at 0.07 pence a kilowatt hour. Not to mention, you can only get it after you've spent £7,000 more on the top spec. I think Kia's dropped a bit of a ball with this. I think it's unusual for them. I think it does seem a bit odd that you can't spec it on the lower grade models as well. I've actually put a call into them to try and find out what the thinking behind that was, but nobody had come back to me at the time of broadcast. But we'll perhaps come back to that in the new year. But I think then we also do have to say that traditionally Kias are pretty efficient in our view. So I think, if you're charging at home, maybe you don't need the heat pump, but we'll have a definitive answer for you in January. Okay. I've got a car buying question for you, Tom.
Yep.
Hello, Electrifying team. This is Ian Braithwaite. Hello, Ian. I'm a keen listener to your podcast. I thought you might be able to help me with our car dilemma. My wife, Joelle, is an amazing woman. Yay. Hi, Joelle. And a dedicated music teacher to many children in Leeds, whose parents enjoy the joy of trumpets and horns in their lives because of her. Let's hope they're practicing loudly this Christmas, Joelle. Unfortunately, she's got bad arthritis. The lease on our Kia e-Niro ends next year. We're starting to look around for a replacement. It's been a good car. We don't love it, found the seats uncomfortable, but it has been faultless otherwise. We have some specific requirements for the next car. The features we would like would be electric handbrake, self-opening and closing boot, electric seat adjustment, ideally an excellent driving position. Joelle can't flop into a seat. She needs to get in and out very gingerly. Front and rear parking sensors, not arthritis related. He says the boot big enough for trumpets. Most of them are. There's a lot of high-end feature requests here, but we're not looking for a large car. What would the smallest car with those attributes be? We wouldn't want it any longer than the current Niro, and ideally shorter due to parking space. SUVs have the high driving positions, but they are so big. Okay, range isn't really an issue. Happy to consider secondhand or another lease. I don't want to say money is no object, but value for money is important. Have you got any thoughts on that one, Tom?
Well, the opening tailgate's the one that I think is going to be the trickiest there. I mean, everything's got electric handbrakes these days except the spring, hasn't it? So I think Volvo EX30, that's not too big, is it? And it's pretty good value at the lower end if you don't want the big battery. That definitely has a power tailgate. The Smart #1, I think, which is similar, isn't it? That has a power tailgate. I always thought slightly strangely.
Yeah.
The sort of curveball, which I know doesn't have a power tailgate as far as I remember, but thinking if you don't need big range and you're looking for value for money and the higher riding position and those sorts of things, there's a Mazda MX-30. Now, it's very rare that you get a car that you think, or get a request where a Mazda MX-30 is what you recommend. But in this case, if you don't need the range, it's quite nice to drive, higher riding position.
Yeah.
all that kit might work for them.
That's a
And
really
certainly
good
cheap.
shout, actually, because it's the biggest issue we've got with the MX-30 is the fact that the range drops off, particularly in winter. It falls like a stone. But if it's that 50 miles of a round trip every day, which you're saying you're using when Joelle isn't working, that's more than enough for that if you can charge at home. And there's also some really good prices on second-hand ones as well, along with good deals on new ones. I would also just chuck in our current car of the year, the Kia EV3, because I know that has remote tailgate and also foot operational tailgate. And again, like the EX30, it's quite a compact SUV. It's not too big at all, and it doesn't feel big when you're behind the wheel in that car. It's a really good car. So I think worth looking at all of those. But yeah, MX-30 is a really good shout, Tom. I like that. Let us know, Ian, how you go on. Go out and book some test drives over Christmas and let us know what your thoughts are on our suggestions. And actually, we've got a great video, Volvo EX30 and the Kia EV3 head to head, the battle of the cars of the year from 2024 and 2025. I know it's a bit weird, but we always make it next year's car of the year. And that's on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, head over there and watch it. Okay, I think we've obviously really busted the half hour. Should we wrap up with a few little quick comments that we've had in that have caught our eye?
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll do the non-controversial one, shall I, about Citron. So Giles Halliwell says Citron are really missing a trick by not plundering the back catalogue of any manufacturer. They've got the DS, the CX, 2CV and SM. Look what Renault have achieved. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? But Citron have always said they're a forward-looking manufacturer.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't look back at their classic stuff. I mean, they've done a few special editions, I suppose, which look back at stuff, but they've said they wouldn't do like a new 2CV. But that H-Fan that we saw earlier is slightly retro, isn't it?
We live in hope.
Yeah.
We do. We live in hope. They've got an amazing back catalogue. I guess it would be interesting to see just how well this Renault succeeds with this, because they've got a lot of cars coming that have got that retro feel and retro name. So let's see what their sales figures are this time next year. But yeah, I agree. Oh yeah, wouldn't it be nice to see an electric 2CV, like a reinvention of it? It'd be so cool.
Yeah, but you look at the reinvention of the Renault 4, it's a bit of a disaster, isn't it? Because it's not like a Renault 4 at all.
But the Twingo's gorgeous, so they've done that really well. Let's end on one of the funniest comments we've had in. It was brilliant. It was on that twin test of the EV3 and the Volvo EX30 from Anthony Onwuna. And he actually subscribes to the channel. So this is from one of our subscribers, which just says, women shouldn't review cars. This is ridiculous. Men would have told us all the gimmicks. Which made us all... We couldn't stop laughing, could we, on the team when we saw that?
Yeah, tell them about the gimmicks, Ginny. It's
that's it.
I don't know if he's joking. Do you think he really thinks that women shouldn't review cars? Maybe women shouldn't buy cars. In fact, maybe women shouldn't drive cars.
That's exactly it. That's it. But I think what I love the most is the fact that Anthony subscribes to the channel. So he just obviously really likes getting cross at all these reviews with women. I mean, we have men on as well, obviously. Tom regularly is on the channel reviewing cars.
Perhaps he only watches mine.
Oh, yeah, maybe he does. Maybe he does. Anyway, it was brilliant. It made us laugh a lot. But we do love hearing from you, the good, the bad and the ugly. We obviously like the good most of all. But I think it's time for us to probably sign off now, isn't it, Tom?
It is, yeah.
I think we just want to say thank you to everyone that has listened this year. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, whether that's on YouTube or on your podcast platform. Drop us a comment or a like and share it if you can. And we will be back with more Kilowatt Half Hour goodness in 2025. But we've got a special coming up next week, haven't we, Tom? Should we just do you want to tell them about that quickly before we go?
Is that the best of 2024? Is that the one?
It is. It is.
Yes.
We have a retro. We have a look back at the year, and all the team are on that.
Yeah, but it does have women in it, so it might not be suitable for everybody.
Okay, I mean, beware, Anthony. Yeah, the rest of the team are off already eating their mince pies and drinking their mulled wine. We're going to go and join them. But from us, thank you, and wishing you all the most lovely festive period. Bye.
Bye.